Style points count. I saw that on a t-shirt, so I had to look up style points on the internet. Turns out that style points are make-believe points awarded when you do something very, very difficult, but you look cool while you do it. Examples. He gets massive style points for that catch. Whoa, nice ball, dude. Style points. Did you see Father Mark knock his head into the Advent wreath? Style points. So I'm thinking about John the Baptist and Jesus and style points. In Advent, we always have 2 Sundays with stories about John the Baptist from the Gospels. I don't know why. One would be enough for me. John the Baptist is not my favorite preacher. He was all about fire and brimstone. He said that if you didn't shape up, God would give you the axe. He called his listeners a bunch of poisonous snakes. Now, Jesus started out as a follower of John the Baptist, but then broke away from him. And I think it was all about style points. John preached grim justice. Jesus preached forgiving love. John pictured God as the punisher. Jesus pictured God as a daddy who won't throw his kids out even if they spit in his eye. John said people better save their skins before it's too late. Jesus said God is the one who saves our skins, and it's never too late. John would not associate with sinners. Jesus hung out with anyone who showed up. Prostitutes, children, tax collectors, the ultra-holy people, blue-collar fishermen, whoever. I say Jesus gets the style points. And if we really are Christians, followers of Christ, then we need to adopt his style. Jesus was a rebel in some ways. The religion of his time focused mainly on holiness, God's holiness, and how people need to live in purity and holiness. Sharp boundaries kept the unholy people away. Well, Jesus was all about compassion instead. God's compassion and how people need to live with compassion. Jesus didn't care at all about those boundaries separating the holy people from the non-holy people. And I love his style. It's not that he rejected his religion. He just wanted to refine the focus. He wanted to make compassion central instead of holiness. And today, you know, there are church people who still want to make holiness and purity central in Christianity. And they draw their own sharp boundaries between the so-called righteous and the so-called sinners. Well, that seems to me they don't get the Jesus style. And style points count, as the t-shirt says. So here I am, a priest of the church, and my job in part is to preserve the traditions of the church. And I will admit that all too often I get drawn into that holiness thing and drawing the boundaries between what's okay and what's not, and who's in and who's not. But every once in a while, I get it right. Sometimes a miracle happens, and I actually act like Jesus. From time to time, I actually get Jesus style points. Now, you know that I don't very often tell you stories in which I am the hero. I really don't like it when preachers always tell stories about themselves in which they always look wise and loving and insightful. I want to know that the preacher has the same struggles and troubles that I do. And you have heard me tell stories about myself over the years that make it pretty clear that I am just a fallible, regular old schlub. I mess up as much as anyone else around here. But let me tell you about one time I actually did get the Jesus style right. One of the things we clergy do is visit people in jail. Jesus expects that after all. He did say, I was in prison and you visited me. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. And he himself was a prisoner on death row and was executed by the regime. Well, I have visited jails from more than one church and in more than one diocese and in more than one state of the United States. One time I became friends with a woman who was having some trouble. She wasn't really religious, and she didn't go for the whole Jesus thing, but she was working on some stuff, and we talked sometimes. And then she ended up in jail for 2 or 3 weeks. I went to visit her. She didn't know I was coming. And you need to know that going to visit an inmate is not really an easy thing to do. You have to sign in, you have to show ID, you have to empty all your pockets, you have to go through a series of locked doorways, you feel like you're going into the fortress of darkness, and the guards sometimes act like you are a criminal. The inmate is not told who you are ahead of time. So anyway, I went to see this woman, and we had a good talk. Actually, I just listened, mostly. You know what good old Mr. Rogers said about listening? More and more, I have come to understand that listening is one of the most important things we can do for one another. Whether the other is an adult or a child, our listening to who that person is can often be our greatest gift to that person. And remember that Jesus himself said, "If you have ears, then hear." So anyway, we had a good talk. I found out later that she went back to her cell and another inmate asked who had come to see her. And she said, "My priest." The other woman said, "I thought you weren't holy." My friend said, "I'm not," and he's fine with that. And when I heard that story later, I thought to myself, style points. At least for that one time, I was like the Jesus I claim to honor and follow. I was really touched that she said, "I'm not holy," and he's fine with that. You know, you and I could say that about Jesus. We are not holy, and he's fine with that. We are not religiously pure, and he is fine with that. We are not perfect, and he's fine with that. I'll go with the style of Jesus rather than that of John the Baptist. Fire and brimstone do not speak to me, forgiving love does. And if I want that for me, then I need to reflect it to others. So do you. There are no outcasts. Jesus said, "Be compassionate as God is compassionate." And if you're like that friend I told you about and you're not sure or completely sure about the whole Jesus thing, that's okay too. Maybe you'd like the words of the Dalai Lama, the leader of Tibetan Buddhism, who's become sort of a spiritual guide to the whole world. He said this: "The essence of all religions is love, compassion, and tolerance. Kindness is my true religion." Style points count. Amen. Amen.